Hello YouTubers, my name is Attila Mate from Blue Sky Photography, and today I would like to talk to you about two great cameras, really great cameras. And one it would be the Sony a7R Mark III, and the second would be the Nikon D850. Now, I have to tell you guys that this is a really fair comparison now, because in my opinion, this is the first camera in the Sony A7 lineup, which in my opinion, I emphasize again, in my opinion, it is professional level and it is a fair competition to the Nikon D850. Because until now, a lot of Sony A7 cameras, they used to lack a lot of very important things, you know. So that's why I say that, in my opinion, this is the first A7 camera from the A7 lineup, not the A9 obviously, which is a fair comparison. But in the same time, what I would like to talk to you is some things and aspects which usually normally people, when they do comparison, they don't really talk about. They will speak about out of focus points and out of focus speed and this and that and all these kind of things, but there are some very important aspects and they don't really cover that. Now, I would like to cover these things because if you want to see specifications, you can go on any website, you know, and you can find specifications. That's not a big issue. So let's see, I will chimp down a little bit on my phone sometimes because I made some notes, you know, so I don't forget them. So I'm sorry about that. Let's see the advantages and the disadvantages of both systems. The Sony system and the Nikon system, and specifically the Sony a7R Mark III, not the whole system, because we cannot speak about the Mark II and the Mark I and all these and the Sony a7s. So advantages of Sony. First of all, the camera, it's a bit lighter and smaller. Definitely true. The camera is lighter and smaller. I don't really know exactly, the exact weight, you know, of the camera, but you can have a look at it. It's a little bit smaller, 300-400 grams difference between the Nikon D850 and the Sony a7R Mark III. Now, when you put the lenses on though, this starts to fade away because the lenses are almost the same weight, you know, like very close to the Nikon lenses, because obviously they are full frame lenses and they have to be big. There's physics, you know, and you can't beat the physics. So that's why I say that when you put lenses on, you know, this starts to fade away, but it is smaller and lighter, definitely. Okay, second advantage of Sony is great 4K video, especially the autofocus. Now this is good. And I have to tell you, like an ex-Sony user, because I used to be a Sony user, like an ex-Sony user, this is a great advantage. And I tell you, even now, I say several times that although I don't use Sony, I always admit that Sony has the best transitions in the video and the best autofocus. Near Canon, obviously. Autofocus is between Canon and Sony, but these two are the best in autofocus, and transition, I'd say Sony is the best. The smoothest transition you can find in autofocus, you know, that's Sony. It's beautiful, unbelievably nice, I tell you. When I used to shoot video with the a6000, I didn't really shoot with the a7R and the a7 Mark II, but the a6000 I used to shoot video 1080p. Those transitions are just blow you away, I tell you. I mean, it's as smooth as it can be, you know, it's not, there is no mistake in that. So, and again, 4K video, yes, Sony 4K video is great. Now, obviously in the past they used to have overheating issues, you know. It looks like slowly they will overcome this problem, you know, and hopefully they will avoid it completely. So, and now with the a7R Mark III, I don't know, but I never heard anything about overheating until now. So, the third advantage of Sony, and this is again something what I think that it's a great advantage and it's a big advantage, and that is the electronic viewfinder. Now, I don't really understand Canon or Nikon or Pentax or these camera manufacturers, why they don't try to implement like Sony they do with the SLT cameras, you know, with the translucent mirror, and they use electronic viewfinder in the DSLR body line. or at least they could give you an option, you know, they could release a camera with electronic viewfinder. You know, I tell you, many photographers will love electronic. I myself, I love electronic viewfinder. It's one of the biggest advantages of mirrorless camera, that you see what you get. That's true, definitely. Can you live without it? Obviously you can. Can you do your job without it? Obviously you can. But in the same time, it is a great help. And that's it. So that's the third big advantage of Sony, the electronic viewfinder. Now, in my opinion, these are the biggest advantages of Sony. And let's now speak a little bit about the disadvantages. Okay, until now, I used to have a lot of disadvantages on Sony. If you look at my Sony videos before, you know, I used to complain a lot about Sony, you know, and why they do this, why they do that, why they are like this, why they are like that, you know. Now, with this camera, I have to tell you that this is the shortest disadvantage list I've ever had, you know. And I tell you why. In my opinion, with this camera, the disadvantages are, first, lenses are expensive and not as many. That's true. Why do I say that? Because if you look at Canon or Nikon or Pentax, you know, these camera manufacturers, they have a lot of third-party options. Even Sony Alpha Mount, they have a lot of third-party options, not as many as Canon or Nikon, but they still have. But with the A7 and the mirrorless lineup, you know, they don't really have these options, these third-party options. So that's why, you know, the lenses are a little bit expensive. Now, if you look at Nikon's original lenses or Canon's original lenses, you know, Canon lenses are a little bit cheaper. And Nikon lenses, they are kind of the same price. Sony is still a little bit expensive than Nikon or Canon. But in the same time, you know, with the newest version of Nikon lenses and the example, let's take the 70-200 f2.8 from Nikon and Canon G Master. The G Master, it will be a little bit expensive, but the difference is not really big, you know, it's kind of negligible. But you have the big options over there with Tamron, with Sigma, Tokina, all these kind of manufacturers with Nikon and Canon. And that's a big advantage. That's why I say that for lenses, you know, and expensive is not as many, it's a disadvantage for Sony here. And the second disadvantage, what I would think, is the customer support is a bit weaker. Now, I have to complain about Sony customer support because I used to deal with them and I just hated, you know, the situation, how they deal with it. You know, actually, you couldn't get somebody on the phone. You know, it's unbelievable. I was trying several times. You just couldn't. Anyway, that's not as big problem as it sounds, you know. Sometimes you might have problem and you might need customer support, great customer support. But in the same time, in my opinion, that is kind of negligible comparing with what it used to be in Sony World, how many problems used to be. Now, they try very hard to fix these problems. And I think that very soon they will be a very, very severe competition for Nikon and Canon. And they will have to scratch their head, I tell you. Now, like I said, I'm not a Sony user. I don't use at all Sony cameras. I used to use them. I don't use at all, and I don't see myself going back to Sony, but in the same time, I admit that this is advantage and this is disadvantage. You know, I try to be as fair as possible over here. Okay, so let's see now the advantages of Nikon D850. Most important is obviously what I said just before, is the lens selection. You will have plenty of choices. Whatever you want, you will get in Nikon and Canon. If you don't find in Nikon, you will find in Tamron, you will find in Sigma, you will find in Tokina. Tokina makes mostly wide-angle lenses, but they do great ones, I have to tell you. Now, I tell you, I used to own a few Tokina lenses, and they were great, I tell you, wide-angle lenses. So this is one of the biggest advantage of Nikon. The second is battery life. Yes, A7R Mark III, it is better in battery, but it's still not DSLR. I used to own the A7R, the A7 Mark II, and the A6000. All three of them, they were annoyingly weak battery life wise. I tell you, sometimes I was wondering that if I could, I just take a battery pack with me. It's annoying, I tell you, when you do photos to attach a big battery pack to the camera. But unfortunately, I was thinking about it because I had to change so often batteries, But anyway, that's gone now. Sony is much better now in battery life wise. But still, it's not a DSLR, The Nikon D850, you stick in a battery, you shoot a whole wedding with a battery. Maybe you need a second one just in case, so maybe. But I tell you, I guarantee you, if you don't shoot 2000 images, with one battery, you shoot the whole wedding. That's it. So that was the second advantage of Nikon. Third advantage, and this might not be an advantage for many people, but for me, it is an advantage, and I explain to you what. This is the crop mode on the Nikon D850, sorry. This crop mode, what is this crop mode? Usually, the Nikon camera, especially the bigger ones, the D7000 series, and the D500 and the D5 and all these kind of, let's say, the pro level cameras, they all have this crop mode. Now, I don't really remember. I used to own the D5100 and the D5500, and I don't really remember if they had it or not. I don't know about that. I don't want to say something what is not true. But I'm sure about the D7100, D7200, D500 and all the rest. This crop mode is that if you want, you can hit a button, turn a wheel, and you transform your camera to if you are on full frame, you transform your camera on an APS-C camera. Or if you are with an APS-C camera, you do it the crop mode, and then you transform in a micro four thirds camera. Now, I used to use this when I was on my son's rugby matches. And why is this very helpful? Because you wake up in some situations that you would like to have a little bit longer reach, and you don't have time to change lenses, because if you change lenses, you miss the moment. So what you do, just hit that button, turn the control wheel, and you are suddenly on APS-C mode, and you have a 70 to 200 lens on the camera, and suddenly you have a 100 to 300 lens on the camera. And that is excellent, I tell you. And especially with the D850, if you turn the camera in this crop mode, you will end up with an APS-C size sensor like the D500. It's a 20 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is excellent sensor, I tell you. And you will have exactly the same pixel pitch, exactly the same pixel sizes, pixel density. So this is something what it is really, really helpful in certain situations. I used to be in situations, I tell you, where I use this all the time. I stick the example I used on my Nikon D7200, I put my Sigma 50 to 100 lens on it and go on, shoot away, and then you see something, I would need 200 millimeter, hit the button, turn the control dial, and that lens suddenly became 100 to 200 millimeter lens on the camera, and it was a 15 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, and it was great. I did a lot of shots with that, and it was great, I tell you. So this is, in my opinion, this is a great advantage on the Nikon side. Now, like I said, might be for some people it's not an advantage, it might be, but in my opinion it is. Okay, the fourth advantage, and this is again for some people maybe it's not advantage, but in my opinion it's really important, and that is the base ISO of 64. Now, okay, you might say, yeah, base ISO 100 is okay. It is okay. Nobody said it's not. But in the same time, if you have the 64, it's much better, much cleaner image. And let's not forget that Sony has base ISO 100 to, I don't know, 25,000 or something like that. But I don't really care about the maximum base ISO, because usually you don't go there. Usually you use all the cameras until 12,000 maximum. That's it, 12,800 maximum. you don't really go over that. So it doesn't really matter if it's 25 or 35 or whatever. That is just marketing strategy. And but Sony has extended ISO to 50, from 100 to 50 on the lower range, and from, I don't know, until 100,000 or whatever on the higher range, which is, again, extended ISO is just, it's just like digital zoom, you know. It's BS. It's just, let's not talk about this, but don't use it, you know. Okay, so I think that these are the basic advantages and disadvantages in these two systems. Like I said, autofocus. I don't want to speak about autofocus because, in my opinion, both cameras, they are excellent. Sony autofocus is great. I don't want to talk about this too long because you can see a lot of videos where they compare both of the cameras. I can assure you it's great for any kind of shooting, you know. It's good for sports, for wildlife. It will track like hell, you know. It's no problem at all. So that's not an issue. And maybe some people will say, oh yeah, he doesn't even have the cameras in his hand. Yes, I don't have the cameras in this hand, but in my hand, sorry. But I used to be up on the camera shop and I played with them, and I know what I'm talking about. You don't need a camera in your hand to realize these things. These things are facts. You don't need anything. I just want to remind some people because they don't really talk about these things, you know, on YouTube. Now, what Sony changed in the A7R Mark III, what I like very much is the dual SD card slot, the flash sync speed, and these kind of things, you know. They did great job over there. And obviously the overheating, probably they overcome on that problem. So, great job. I really think that this is they are on the good way to become a real serious opposition, serious how do you call it, competition, serious competition to Nikon and Canon. They will be serious competition, I tell you. Now, if they would reduce the prices of the lenses, you know, and if they would continue the prices of the cameras like they used to do with the A7R and the A7S, they used to be great price, and the A6000, great price. Now they raised the price a little bit, but anyway, that's a different story. So I hope that this video was helpful to you guys. I just wanted to help somebody out there. If you are undecided, if you want to think about, you know, you just have to think yourself, what is the most important for me? Electronic viewfinder, or the advantages of Sony lineup, you know, it's lighter, smaller, these kind of things. If that is important, definitely go with Sony, but you have to bear the consequences, which are the disadvantages. If you want bigger lens selection, better battery life, you know, crop mode, these kind of things, you have to go with Nikon. So it's up to you guys to decide. If you want to add something to this video, please feel free and leave a comment down below. I'm not a perfect person, I'm just a human being, so I can make mistakes. And if you are a Sony user, if you think that I left something out of the Sony, please feel free and leave a comment down below, no problem at all, you know. And let's help others to make decisions. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe and share my videos, and hit the little bell button near the subscription so you get notified when I upload another video. And other than that, I wish you a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.